Hey guys, welcome to the channel. It's Jack with Stronghold Strength and Conditioning. And today we're talking about which fats should be avoided for a healthy metabolism, part 2, because I know you watched part 1 already. But before we get into it, make sure you take a moment and hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on future content like this. Every Thursday I'm putting out videos showing you how to resolve aches and pains, prevent injuries, and overall optimize your performance inside the gym and outside of it in your daily life and routine. And it does not get much better than that. So jump on it. Ready? Let's go ahead and get into this one. All right, guys, the topic of the day, which fats should be avoided for a healthy metabolism? And last time we were on the topic, we talked about saturated fats specifically. Today, we're gonna be looking at polyunsaturated fats more specifically, okay? So looking more in depth at those. And my first question is, if you knew something was slowing down your thyroid, decreasing your cellular energy overall, increasing oxidative damage in your body, and encouraging you to gain weight overall, what would you do? It's as simple as that question, and I want you to kind of ponder it as we kind of go through our talk today. So let's go ahead and dive into it a little bit deeper here. First of all, what are polyunsaturated fatty acids? And instead of me saying that long every time, I'm just going to start calling them PUFAs from now on for short. Okay? So they are fatty acids with many double carbon bonds. So they have 4 electrons versus 2 electrons, which the bond itself is strong, but there's a little bit of a hitch to that. So when double bonds are in the presence of oxygen, they are actually less stable to oxidative stress. These double bonds are first of all present because there are not hydrogen ions saturating the fat itself. So if the hydrogen ions are saturating it, that's when we see a saturated fat. When there's not enough hydrogen ions saturating it, it is double bonded and becomes or is a polyunsaturated fat. So that's the main difference chemically as far as what they are. And again, PUFAs are more reactive to oxygen in general. This makes them oxidize a lot easier and more likely to result in oxidative stress in our bodies overall. Because, again, heat and oxygen, 98.6 degrees, breathing oxygen, it's a recipe. That's all I gotta say right there. So, when we consume these polyunsaturated fats and they are oxidized in our bodies, the byproduct of that is free radicals. Now, free radicals are unpaired when they are made, and then they actually take electrons from other molecules, so they begin to create more damage. It's kind of a cycle that begins when you are oxidizing and creating more free radicals from the type of fat that you're actually eating. Now, when we have more free radicals that are stealing molecules, this creates more unstable molecules, and it just starts to become a snowball effect. Now, the damage is accelerated aging, hormone imbalance, and cancer and immune disorders. All that from the simple consumption of polyunsaturated fatty acids. Now, first of all, understand this. Polyunsaturated fatty acids are unavoidable. They are in just about anything and everything you could eat to some extent and some degree. So the whole point is not that you're avoiding polyunsaturated fatty acids altogether or eliminating them, but maybe perhaps minimizing them in your diet. And when we are eating PUFAs, they're primarily found in vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes, such as soy and grains, cold water fish, such as your salmon. They are in poultry, they're in beef, they're in pork, they're in grains, especially the poultry, beef, pork that are fed grains and soy and corn. That should be noted. But even in grass-fed animals, there is still some polyunsaturated fat content. But remember from our saturated fat talk is that when it's paired with saturated fats, the saturated fats actually help protect from oxidation of polyunsaturated fats. So that is an important factor to keep in the back of your mind here for this one. Now, the highest polyunsaturated fats are soybean oil, corn oil, safflower oil, grapeseed oil, sesame oil, nut oils, flaxseed, fish oil, cod liver oil, evening primrose oil, borage oils, and yes, the omega-3 and omega-6 oils that are now or have recently been deemed essential. And there's problems with that. Let's go ahead and go a little bit deeper here. So the question, are they essential, is important to ask here. And the answer, simply put, no. But here's why. Because our body can actually create PUFAs, or polyunsaturated fatty acids, from saturated fat and sugar. So if you are eating saturated fats in your diet naturally, and you're taking in simple sugars, good sources of them, the right types of carbohydrates, then your body can actually produce a polyunsaturated fat in the form of omega-9, which is meat acid. So omega-9 has an anti-inflammatory role. So it is beneficial that we should have some polyunsaturated fat in our diet. The fact is, though, that we do not need to go and get it from exogenous sources or be supplementing and forcing it down our throats in the form of omega-3 and omega-6. Now, part of the problem with that is when we do take exogenous sources, we're actually inhibiting the production of our own ability to create omega-9. So that is a big thing to understand as well. So by taking it, we're not only loading ourselves with these fats, we're also inhibiting the other end of it. So we need to realize that it's a double-edged sword there. It really is hurting us on multiple layers. So the question we need to be asking now is, where did it all go wrong again? So this goes back to 1929 with Mildred and George Burr. In 1929, they wrote a paper claiming that omega-6 was essential based off of their study of rats and their consumption of fats. So in the study, it was looking at rats that consumed polyunsaturated fats and rats that were on a fat-free diet. And what the study concluded was that the rats that ate polyunsaturated fats were healthier than those that were on a fat-free diet. Again, keep those words in mind. That's very important to understand, which was true. Those rats were healthier because they were eating the polyunsaturated fats. But, and this is a big but here, there's more to this, so hang on a second here. But this is when they coined the term essential fatty acids, or it's also known as Burr's disease back then. 10 years later, 1939-40, the Clayton Foundation Biochemical Institute realized that what Burr's, Mildred, and George had actually found was that the rats had a vitamin B6 deficiency. Now, the Burrs did not realize this because in 1929, the B vitamins had not yet been discovered. So they didn't even know that B vitamins existed when they were studying these rats, and therefore they realized overall what their study actually showed was that the rats who had been consuming polyunsaturated fats slowed down their deficiency. So the PUFAs slowed down their metabolism and decreased their need for nutrients overall. That is all that their study showed. It had nothing to do with the rats actually being healthier overall, because they were still deficient in B6, but the rats that did not have polyunsaturated fats in their diet had a faster metabolism and a higher need for more nutrients, more B6. The ones that didn't, the polyunsaturated fats slowed down and created less of a deficiency so that they could survive longer. So this is more of a show of survival versus thriving type thing. So simply put, the PUFAs prevented a deficiency on a deficient diet. And that's where this all started, and a lot of people started to believe that the polyunsaturated fats were healthier to consume regularly. But let's just not take it right there. Let's actually give you a few other things to chew on. So again, I mentioned this in my previous video, part 1. In the 1940s, farmers were attempting to actually use coconut oil to fatten up their animals, but they found that it made them lean, active, and hungry. What they soon found worked better, see, I didn't tell you the second part in that first video because I wanted to save it for this one. They soon found that corn and soy oil did the trick to fatten up their animals quicker. See, animals that gain weight faster on a farm mean that the farmer spends less money on them and they can ship them out a little bit sooner. So this is what the farmers wanted. They wanted to produce cattle and livestock and animals that were putting on fat quicker, and they were able to do it through corn and soy oils. Now here's another one. Bears, who hibernate in the winter, actually start that process by eating lots of nuts, seeds, and berries. Now, the bears that were given coconut oil, this was actually a study, bears that were given coconut oil and the right carbs, a good combination of carbs, were actually unable to hibernate. So, depending on what the bears ate, it would determine their ability to hibernate through the winter, whether that be the nuts and seeds, polyunsaturated fatty acids, or saturated fat and carbohydrates. Pretty interesting. Okay, one more for you. In the 1950s, it was established that polyunsaturated fats suppress metabolism and cause hypothyroidism. There was not really a question at that point. They damage the mitochondria, they suppress the respiratory enzymes, and they promote oxidation. So we know those three things about them. Essentially, the more PUFAs you take in, the more suppressed tissue and thyroid response that you have. So that means that you will be able to have less cellular energy production and a slower thyroid. And if you go back all the way to my video a few weeks ago about what a healthy metabolism looks like, and I'll link that here, it is talking about how thyroid directly relates to our metabolic processes overall. So hospitals will actually feed soy oil emulsions to cancer patients in order to prevent them from losing weight. This is a technique that we actually use in hospitals. So we had established that fact that they can slow the metabolic processes, create a less deficient diet, and slow the processes of cancer and weight loss in that sense. So you might be saying to yourself right now, but I thought omega-3s and omega-6s were shown to decrease inflammation and overall lower cholesterol. The answer is yes, short term. But the question we really need to be asking is, how are they doing that? So again, we need to remember that the things that they're correcting there, the cholesterol and the inflammation, are both symptoms. They're not the problem themselves. So how are the omega-3s and omega-6 decreasing those symptoms in our body, and is it good for us long term is the other question. So essential fatty acids basically suppress the immune system by suppressing the cells that cause inflammation. So it's not that they're decreasing the inflammation directly, they're just suppressing the cells that help us create inflammation. And we have to remember that inflammation is actually our body's response in healing, in a sense. So if we're suppressing just the act of those cells to be able to cause inflammation, we're not really solving the problem. We're just muting, again, the symptoms of it. So this is something that you also see as a side effect of statin, is the liver damage. So we're actually doing some damage to our liver when we suppress those immune system cells in that way, and that is why you see that same symptom in statins, because they are inhibiting those processes overall. Now, the long-term evidence for omega-3 and omega-6 has not really shown any support that they help with cardiovascular disease in any way. Most of the research that's positive for omega-3 and omega-6 is short-term stuff and relatively not big studies overall. We have to keep in mind that this is a large industry that is making a lot of money at this point in time because they were deemed to be essential at one point. And we might be backpedaling a little bit here. So in 2012, there was a study with 70,000 patients that were using omega-3 supplementation. Basically what they were looking at is how those patients came out with all-cause mortality, cardiac death, sudden death, myocardial infarction, or stroke. And essentially there was more cases toward the end of that study as it went on over a longer period of time. In 2014, there was a 600,000 participant study done that showed no improvements in heart or cardiovascular health. So again, we're seeing positive benefits for short term, but as those studies get on longer and longer, they're either showing negative effects or they're showing really no difference at all as we get into longer duration, bigger studies. And finally, there was a Sydney Health study that replaced saturated fats with omega-6 in men that were aged 30 to 59 years old, and they recently had cardiac events. 8 years later, they looked at these same men and they had higher cardiovascular disease rates, coronary heart disease rates, and death overall, and that was replacing saturated fats with omega-6. Of course, the most in-depth study you could do is look at the American people right now, because it's been about 30 years or so, maybe even longer than that at this point, that we've been eating a diet that contains a large number of polyunsaturated fats in it and loaded with it purposefully in that intent, and we're not getting any healthier anytime soon, are we necessarily? So we really need to take all these factors into consideration here. Alright, so what are the main takeaways from today's talk? First of all, polyunsaturated fatty acids are more unstable due to their double bonds. They are more likely to oxidize in the presence of oxygen and under heat sources. They accelerate aging, they decrease immune function, they slow the metabolism, they increase weight gain, they create hormonal imbalances, they encourage cancer, they also cause autoimmune diseases, diabetes, and heart disease. I mean, these are some big things, people. We can mitigate the risk by not taking in as many exogenous sources right there. That's big to understand. And those sources are sunflower oil, safflower oil, soybean oil, corn oil, seed oil, vegetable oil, almond oil, walnut oil, peanut oil, grapeseed oil, canola oil, fish oil, and yes, the omega-3s and omega-6 oils. Lastly, make sure you check your labels. Just because it says healthy or organic does not mean that it is. If you look at the labels, a lot of things are being snuck in there, like soy or other things like that as stabilizers, emulsifiers, all that kind of stuff. So you'll find it in crackers, chips, cookies, popcorn, frozen dinners, soups, ice cream, alternative dairy products, and pre-made meals overall. So you really have to keep your eye out, especially with anything that has a label. Read the label, look at the ingredients, look out for the oils and the soys and that kind of stuff that are in it, seeds, nuts, those types of things, legumes, beans, all that stuff. Reading it, looking at it closely. If you guys like this video, make sure you let me know by clicking that big thumbs up down below, and take a moment to share this one with a friend. It is part 2 of the previous one, so if you shared it with one person, then share it with them again. Give them a little bit fuller view of it, more information there. And last but not least, if you have not already, make sure you take a moment and hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on future content like this. Every Thursday I'm putting out videos showing you how to resolve aches and pains, prevent injuries, and overall optimize your performance inside the gym and outside of it in your daily life and routine. And it does not get much better than that. So, welcome to the Stronghold Army. I'll catch you guys next week.